Respected House, for a moment I thought that I was sitting and watching an Aaj Tak bulletins. Because the way the topics are being changed, the way it has been changed from the history to the illegal immigrants to Bangladesh and to Nepal. And there's facts which the opposition bench members are presenting today. It reminds me of a very beautiful quote by Albert Einstein. He once said, and I quote, that some people uses statistics and facts like a drunken man uses lamppost. More for the support than for the actual light. Whereas today we have presented these beautiful bills which very critically and very easily understand the fact that when we evict the encroachers, it will preserve the forest land and therefore it will secure the future of the indigenous people in Assam. We must understand one word, which is literally we must understand because the opposition bench member could not define that word. And that's why they are presenting different kinds of facts. We must understand who encroachers are. Encroachers are those person who unlawfully occupies any land. So encroachers could be anybody. It could be the Honorable Chief Minister of the state. It could be billionaires, millionaires, anybody. So when the members of the opposition bench today presenting the data that the Vandhya International School is in the encroacher land, that the millionaires are given the land which is being encroached by the millionaires, then they are encroachers. Obviously, we support this fact. And that's why today I stand in front of you and it becomes a moral responsibility to stand in front of you and advocate for the motion of the House. Greetings, Honorable Speaker, sir, in the August House. Respected House, today I have a matchstick in my hand. And unlike the other side, I do not want to burn down the house with false argument. I want to light a candle. I want to put forth the positive argument that will definitely prove that this bill must be accepted in this house. For a reason that this bill is very simple. We need not need to go to our past, what happened in the past. We need not need to understand the rocket science to understand this bill. What we need to understand who the encroachers are, who we need to evict, and what we need to protect. What we need to protect is the forest land. We are today standing against protecting the forest land. Can you imagine, can this respected House imagine that we are against the forest land? Today we are talking about securing the future of the indigenous people. How do we secure ourselves? We secure ourselves by securing the forest land. The tribal people or the indigenous people who are intricately connected to the forest land, their identity is the forest land. Today if you go to someone's house, to your family's house, how do we introduce our plants? We introduce our plants as this is the plant that I grew when I was 6 years old. Now when I'm 10 years old, this plant has been risen to that much and the fruits are being given to me. We introduce a plant to that. Therefore, the indigenous people who are residing nearby those forest lands, who are protecting the forests, and they are coming out with various initiatives. Initiatives such as planting trees, initiatives such as Hathi Bandhu festivals, where they are preserving these areas, where they are planting paddy fields for the elephants, and they are protecting those elephant corridors. Respected House, sometimes it becomes very easy for us. We have different ways, we need to brainstorm. And sometimes the topics are so easy that we need to understand what the topic is. For the sake of Assamese people, for the sake of preserving the forest land, and for the sake of the benefits of Assam, we need not always need to emotionalize everything. We need not always need to emotionalize the fact that how many people sacrifice their lives, what is our history, what happened in the past. We need to be in the present, and we need to understand the fact that what encroachers are, what forest land is, what we need to protect, and who are we and how do we need to protect our future. We will protect our future by the evictions of encroachers. Encroachers are encroachers. Whatever they may be millionaires, anybody. So we need to remove them, and therefore we need to protect our forest. And because a report published in the Assam Tribune clearly mentioned that there are 18 lakh hectares of reserved forest land in Assam. And therefore of this 18 lakh, 3 lakh hectares has been occupied by the encroachers. And the series of evictions that the government has successfully done has preserved 3,000 hectares. Now, if the government can preserve 3,000 hectares and thereby plant 1 crores of trees in those areas, then it becomes a very simple and protective initiative for us to protect the indigenous people. We have this data, we know what to protect, and we know how to secure our future. Respected House, even after all this argument, if the members of the opposition bench are still adamant to their false belief, it quite reminds me of a very famous quote by this Stephen Hawking. He said, and I quote, that the greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance. It is, of course, the illusion of knowledge, unquote. With this, I rest my case, but not my cause. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir. Thank you, August House.
Honorable Speaker, sir, we are almost at the end of this debate. But this debate never actually came into force because the mover of the entire House forgot to submit the bill to Honorable Speaker, sir. Honorable Speaker, sir, multiple members of the proposition highlighted multiple issues. A very common section have been highlighted mostly by the members of the proposition is the indigenous people of Assam. even if you look into the entire agenda we have been formatted in the entire moment of time, a very important core concept lies the indigenous people of Assam. But actually, who are the indigenous people of Assam? Does the Indian constitution in any context considers that who are actually the indigenous people of Assam? There are multiple communities which thrive in the entire region of Assam, and there are multiple communities who came from foreign lands and resided in Assam. There is no proper jurisdiction neither in the entire Republic of India's any documentation or even under the government of Assam's any jurisdiction that who are actually the indigenous people of Assam. Another worthy member of the proposition highlighted a very important core concept. That entire concept is about the evolution of encroachers. But when we look into the encroachers section, the encroachers are not only limited to the entire illegal immigrants, because the entire proposition bench members have been highlighting about the Mia Bangladeshis, about the Rohingya Muslims, and about multiple communities who are foreigners. But we have to understand a very core and important concept that encroachers are not only limited to the illegal immigrants who have came from outside. A very important core concept and a contradiction lies within the motion itself. The motion also speaks about the forest region. Now, when we look into the forest region, we clearly see a lot of Adivasis reside in the forest region. And actually, who are illegal immigrants? Encroachers are basically the one who have occupied land illegally. And who have occupied land illegally? The ones whose entire documentation is not there under the government of India or the government of Assam. So technically, all the Adivasi communities who thrive in the forest regions, whose entire land are basically the land which have been in an ancestral process. Now, those land are not been considered under the government of India's proper documentation or the government of Assam's documentation. Which also means that the entire forest Adivasis who reside in the forest region, they are also encroachers which violate the fundamental violation of the entire motion which have been put forward in this moment of time. Honorable Speaker, sir, today I have a metaphorical coin in my hand. And when we toss this coin, there's a 50% probability of getting the front end. But there is also a 50% probability of getting the other side. And the members of the proposition with their fake statistics, beliefs and manipulation have been polishing this coin again and again, but today I reflect on my journey to prove that other side. A very important core concept in the entire motion which have been presented have been missed out, and that entire section is the forest areas. Now, when we look deeply into the forest areas, we also have to understand that majority of the forest areas are not being particularly defined. And majority of the encroachments or the residency in forest areas does not happen into the core region of the forest. It actually happens into the border areas. And the borders are not been defined properly. Even the Guwahati High Court in the multiple times have highlighted that the government of India's documentation or the government of Assam's documentation are not very much precise with this coordinates to highlight what is the actually a definition of forest. And now there remains a question at the end, that if they have to save the indigenous people of Assam, we require to, we should have the eviction of encroachment, then why only in forest region? If eviction is required, that why only it is limited to the forest regions, not to the entire context of Assam? And even after all these arguments, if still the members of the proposition are quite adamant to their statements, it quite reminds me of a very beautiful quote. That unlike the stomach, the brain does not signals when it's empty. With this, do I end my case? But definitely not my cause. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir. Thank you, August Gathering.